All right, guys, I am back with a brand new review and recap of what I think is the worst piece of writing I have ever seen in a TV show ever. Ever. And this 7th episode of the Star Wars The Acolyte is where they finally reveal what happened with the 4 Jedi and why one of those Jedi was actually willing to take his own life. And this episode was completely nonsensical. The ridiculousness of it all is just off the charts crazy. And I'm going to kind of recap this here. And if you don't want spoilers and you don't want to know what happened, you want to leave the video now. So what we find out, first of all, is they backtrack and now admit that these girls were too old to start the training. So they kind of backtrack that prior to the events of them going in to test these girls. They did have a conversation about them being too old. And there were a lot of people online, trying to point fingers at all the fans who got upset at that. Look, they fixed it. That's still canon. But the rest of this is ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you right now, Disney hates men. They seriously hate men. The women who made this and are part of this and wrote this hate men. And it is very clear through the actions of the Jedi in this. It also makes the Jedi look completely stupid, ignorant, and that they can't even actually do anything. I mean, there's the part that we've already seen in a previous episode where the girls are about to fall into a pit and Saul's there and he can't even use the Force to pull them in, and he can only end up saving one of them physically by reaching down to grab them. Does he not have any type of Jedi training? Like, come on. He couldn't pick up both the girls and pull them in? Completely nonsensical. It breaks canon. It breaks all the rule of the Jedi and everything. And let's break this down because this is freaking ridiculous. I even told this to my wife, and she was like in shock at how stupid this was. So at one point, and I could tell you with only one episode left, we're not going to get any answers as to the Sith. We're not going to get answers onto how these girls were actually created. We're not going to get any of those answers. There's no way that they can possibly resolve this in a way that's going to be satisfying. So at one point in this episode, so it goes back to tell you the story of what actually happened to the witches and with the Jedi. The Jedi were unaware that they were there on this planet, and Saul kind of found them. And at one point, they were getting ready to just kind of go in and talk to the girls and then just leave. And the younger Jedi, the white curly-haired guy, gets all up in arms. And they had done the blood test on the girls. And what they found out through the blood test is that these 2 girls were basically one entity split into 2 through the Force somehow. And that younger Jedi was like, oh, this is my ticket back to Coruscant. We need to go get these girls and bring them back now. And he runs off on a speeder. Brash decision. Of course, it's the male that did this. Just a brash decision to run down there to get these girls. So Saul follows after him to stop him. But they get there and they sense that something is going on. And so they decide to go up and confront the witches. And when they go up there, you've got the 2 witches, the head witches there. And they're ready to kind of take on the 2 Jedi. And tensions get high. And the one Jedi's afraid that she's going to kind of overtake his mind, but she's like, it's been fortified. He tells her it's been fortified. You can't get back into my mind. And that's when the head witch turns into smoke to go over to May. And that's when Saul all of a sudden lights his lightsaber and stabs the smoke and ends up killing that witch. And you're like, why did he even light his lightsaber? Like, there was no reason. He wasn't being threatened. There was no reason for him to draw his lightsaber in that scene whatsoever. Again, it's showing how stupid the men are. So he just lights his lightsaber, stabs it into the smoke, and ends up killing her. What? And she's dying there and says, I was going to let Osha go with you. It was her decision. I was going to let her go, and then she dies. So the other witch gets really upset, and there's this big battle scene between them and the witches. And then Kalnaka comes in, and he's being possessed by all of the witches. You can see that all of them together have possessed his mind, and he's got to fight the 2 Jedi. And then Trinity has to come in, and she jumps on top of Kalnaka and is using the Force to get the witches out of his mind, and as she pulls the witches out of his mind, they all drop dead. What? What the heck just happened? Like, there's no explanation as to anything. It shows how ridiculously stupid the men are. None of this should have happened. It didn't make any sense. It was completely nonsensical. And then Trinity says, we should cover this up. We're not going to tell the Jedi what happened. It's better for Osha if they never find out what happened. You do find out that May, and I'm glad that they did this, the one thing I did like is they show that May didn't do the fire on purpose, that it got out of control, and she was really scared that this was going to cause some serious damage, and so she didn't mean to kill her sister or cause the damage that she did. And so I'm glad that they showed that. But it's too little too late. They make the Jedi completely moronic in this episode. Everything in this episode shows how ignorant the Jedi are, how stupid the men are. The whole thing was a complete joke. The person who wrote this, not even look to see who wrote this specific episode, shouldn't be writing anything. They have no concept of Star Wars. They have no concept of a decent story. Everything was terrible. So what I tell people is if you haven't watched this yet, skip the Acolyte. It's garbage. The whole thing is garbage. It's a smear on Star Wars. It's a smear on the Jedi. It's smearing men. Everything about this is utter garbage. I give this a big fat 0 stars. This episode was a complete joke. All right, guys, so there you go. There's my review and recap of the 7th episode. I'm going to watch the final episode next week, and I'm not expecting anything to be answered. Like, this whole thing is ridiculous. All right, guys, if you guys have seen it, what did you think? We will see you on the next review.